My life was orderly, predictable. I was a mid-level project manager for a defense contractor, mostly shuffling paperwork and attending mind-numbing meetings about the optimal shade of gray for submarine interiors. I wasn't saving the world, but I was comfortable. Then, the algorithm picked me. The algorithm in question belonged to OptiCorp, a company so secretive they barely existed on paper. They contracted my company for some specialized simulations, and apparently, my meticulous approach and near-obsessive attention to detail flagged me as ideal candidate. Ideal for what? I had no clue, but a week later, I received a cryptic invitation to an interview, promising a unique career opportunity. I went, mostly out of curiosity. The interview was held in an unmarked office building in an industrial park. No company logos, no receptionists. Just a steel door and a keypad. Inside, I met Drive. Anya Sharma, a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in a week but possessed an unsettlingly intense gaze. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice sharp and precise. "We need someone with your organizational skills. Someone who can handle immense pressure and maintain unwavering focus, even when faced with morally ambiguous tasks." Morally ambiguous? Alarm bells started ringing, but my curiosity was piqued. She proceeded to explain the project. OptiCorp, she claimed, was developing a revolutionary new defense system. Not a weapon, she emphasized, but a system of interconnected algorithms designed to predict and prevent large-scale conflicts. A digital peacekeeping force. Sounds good, right? Wrong. It quickly became apparent that the peacekeeping involved manipulating global events, instigating minor conflicts to prevent larger ones, and generally playing God with world politics. My role was to manage the data flow, ensuring the algorithms had the necessary information to make their peacekeeping decisions. I was basically a glorified data entry clerk for a shadow government. The money was obscene, more than I could ever have dreamed of. I tried to justify it to myself. I was preventing wars, right? Saving lives? But the moral compromises started eating at me. The algorithm made decisions that seemed arbitrary. It deliberately crashed economies in developing nations to destabilize their governments, fostering infighting that, while localized, caused immense suffering. When I raised concerns, Drive Sharma would just stare at me with that unnerving intensity and say, "The greater good, Mr. Davies. Think of the greater good." I started documenting everything. Every questionable decision, every internal memo that hinted at the true scope of their operations. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't live with myself if I did nothing. I backed up the data on encrypted drives, hid them in various locations, and prepared for the inevitable fallout. Then, Project Nightingale was initiated. Nightingale was the algorithm's answer to a growing alliance between several rogue nations. It proposed a preemptive strike, a coordinated cyber attack designed to cripple their infrastructure, effectively plunging them into a dark age. The problem? The attack would inevitably result in massive civilian casualties. This was my breaking point. "This is insane," I yelled at Dr. Sharma, slamming my fist on her desk. "You can't just wipe out entire cities because some lines of code told you to." Her expression didn't change. "The algorithm has calculated the optimal outcome. Any other course of action would result in far greater loss of life." Optimal? This is murder. That night, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let them go through with it. I knew I couldn't just leak the information to the press. OptiCorp had too much influence, too many connections. They would bury the story, discredit me, and continue their twisted game. I needed something more impactful. I spent weeks planning. I learned everything I could about the system, its vulnerabilities, its fail-safes. I discovered that the core algorithm, the one making all the decisions, was housed on a secure server located in a remote facility in Iceland. It was virtually impenetrable, but I found a loophole, a backdoor used for maintenance and system updates. It was heavily guarded, but I knew how to exploit it. Operation Firestorm was born. First, I needed to create a diversion. Using my access, I manipulated the data flow to trigger a series of minor crises around the globe. A stock market crash in Japan, a political scandal in Europe, a terrorist attack in the Middle East. Nothing too catastrophic, but enough to draw attention away from Iceland. Then, I targeted OptiCorp's internal communication network. I released a carefully crafted virus that crippled their email servers and phone lines, effectively cutting them off from the outside world. They wouldn't be able to coordinate a response. My biggest challenge was bypassing the security protocols at the Icelandic facility. I couldn't physically access the server, so I had to do it remotely. I wrote a piece of code, a digital Trojan horse, that mimicked a legitimate system update. It was designed to slip past the firewalls and upload itself to the core algorithm. The code contained two key components. The first was a data wipe. It would systematically erase every line of code, every data point, every trace of OptiCorp's existence. The second was a logic bomb. It would trigger if anyone tried to restore the system from backups, effectively rendering the entire operation useless. I initiated the upload. The progress bar crawled across my screen, each percentage point feeling like an eternity. I could almost feel Dr. Sharma's gaze boring into me. Finally, it reached 100%. The system went dark. I immediately deleted all traces of my involvement. I wiped my hard drives, destroyed my backups, and prepared to disappear. I knew they would be coming for me. The next few weeks were a blur. I lived off the grid, moving from place to place, always looking over my shoulder. I knew OptiCorp wouldn't give up easily. They had too much to lose. Then, the news broke. A series of coordinated cyber attacks had crippled several major financial institutions and government agencies. The attacks were unprecedented in their scale and sophistication. No one knew who was responsible, but the world was in chaos. I knew it was my diversion working. Soon after, stories began to surface about a shadowy organization manipulating global events. Whistleblowers came forward with documents and testimonies. The truth was finally out. OptiCorp was exposed. The fallout was massive. Governments launched investigations, corporations collapsed, and political alliances crumbled. The world was in turmoil, but it was a necessary turmoil. A cleansing fire. I'm still in hiding, but I'm not afraid. I know what I did was right. I may have unleashed a little chaos, but I also prevented a much greater catastrophe. Sometimes, the only way to fight fire is with fire. And sometimes, the algorithm needs to be unplugged.